welcome to a brand new edition of Sales Talk, the TV show where we talk about all things sales. And as you can see, we are still in lockdown, and I guess we're all dying to get out and get back to some normality. But in the meantime, I'm bringing you some amazing guests at Sales Talk here. And today we're joined by Gary King. And you can see Gary on the screen. Gary runs 3 businesses, and one of those businesses is called Tendo. And Tendo offers business mentoring to help owners, managers build the right businesses and do more of what they love to do. So, Gary, welcome to Sales Talk.
Well,
and if you could just introduce yourself.
Yeah, sure. No, my pleasure. I'm looking forward to this. Very excited. I've spent 25 years really in working for other people. My first sales role was at 24, where I was finished up managing a team of 45 people, sales and customer service. The manufacturer that I worked for decided to go from selling through a distributor model. We had 8 clients in the UK to going direct. So we had 600 clients overnight, and I was tasked with putting that infrastructure in place. That was really my first exposure to sales, and I loved it. Left that business after 14, 15 years, went into a corporate FTSE 100 business, and I finished up doing a number of roles: key account director, sales manager, general manager, MD, all needed sales. So I've loved sales. I've been involved in sales pretty much for most of my career. And 10 years ago this year, I decided to stop working for other people and get in charge of my own destiny. And I will work with small business owners, as you say, to help them put those plans in place and build a better business so they can do more of what they love. And I think fundamentally for me, what appeals to me about this is one of the big things for business owners to unlock is how they sell their products and services to their target market at the prices they want to sell them at, working with the right customers for the right length of time. And I think there's massive unlocked potential in that space.
Yeah, I mean, that we'll dig into so much of that, because I think that the breadth of your knowledge, having all of those roles, as you say, the one common denominator through all of that is the need to sell, right?
Yep.
And we deal in the Sales Mindset Coach with so much about the stigma that there is associated with sales. And that's quite often the piece that people spend so much energy on, is trying to disassociate from the act of selling, that they don't embrace that part of their business. So they become, great at what they do, but they forget to sell things.
It's the technician business owner piece again, isn't it? You're a great marketing consultant because you've been in marketing all your career. You set up a marketing agency, but somebody else used to sell when you were employed, and now you have to sell your own services. And we kind of naturally want to do what we train to do, but for the reality for most small business owners, they're not trained in sales, so they kind of have a bit of a stab at it, but often they're not very good at it.
Yeah, I see that in sales. I see that in some of the professions as well. Yeah. The lawyers that are watching this, the accountants that are watching this, they kind of call themselves, they're in practices. That's fine. But in reality, they're also selling their services, right? And Absolutely. They disassociate themselves just as much. Just before we jump into some questions, because I'm fascinated to dig into your career and what you've learned from that and how you translate that to the mentoring piece. I just want to ask you, Tendo, I've tried in my thinking to understand and work out how you've got to that name. I'd love just to understand a little bit about what that means to you.
Yeah, well, do you know what? That's what goes with living with a marketeer as I was at the time, 10 years ago. Tendo is Latin, and it broadly translates to aim, strive, deliver.
Okay.
And the logic is, because when I started out, I was doing interim sales. Most small business owners because sales isn't seen as a core competence of theirs, because they don't want to sell, they don't want to be seen to be selling, and they've got all this other stuff that comes with running a business. So sales never gets to the top of the list. The idea was that I'd start out doing interim sales. So that the whole aim, strive, deliver was helping me and the client get an absolute focus on who's your target market, how can I help you unlock that, and how can I help you drive sales so you can focus on doing the technician stuff back at the office.
I love it. It's a nice story. My wife also was in marketing when she worked, when we both worked for Shell. And I took literally that sales and marketing need to be closely aligned. Just didn't know where to stop that story. So yeah, behind every good salesperson is a good marketeer, I imagine, somewhere along the line. Well, it's great. I mean, it's great to hear that, and I love to know where people's businesses come from. Last week on Sales Talk, we were talking to Dr. Will Baldry, who runs a company called Courageous, and he focuses on the psychology associated with selling. And you've spoken here about business owners avoiding this piece. In your experience, Gary, what really is at the heart of that? Why people, business owners, owner managers, kind of miss the criticality of the sales part, where to you and I, it's just so obvious and logical, right?
Yeah, I think it's one of those, isn't it? You don't know what you don't know. If you're trained in it and you understand how to do it, it's a bit like driving a car, isn't it? If you can drive a car and you've got a driving license, it's second nature. If you can't drive a car, if you've barely had a handful of lessons, it kind of frightens you, it scares you. And I think sales scares business owners. I think every small business owner understands the need to sell, but they're scared of it because they think they can't do it, they don't know how to do it. And then what happens is, because they don't approach it in the correct manner, their first few interactions are they're getting beaten up on price. Customers are not coming back to them after they've had numerous coffees and meetings and proposals. And all of a sudden, they get this, I'm not good at sales, I'm getting beaten up on price, I'm not getting my conversions because people aren't coming back to me. So I'm going to almost retract to not sell because I don't want to put myself in a position where I'm proven to not be able to sell.
Yeah.
So they shy away from it.
Yeah, so I've got that mindset that I'm going to fail before I try, because the emotional, the negative emotions are just not worth dealing with, right? They're not worth confronting with and overcoming from a skill set perspective, which is interesting, isn't it? Because when you think about business owners and what they do, they must be proficient and expert at so many things that they've invested in developing and maintaining relevant current skills. Yet that sales part is almost the things we'll get around to, or we'll naturally fall into that, or, well, anyone can do it, or I don't like it, but I'll be all right. Very curious I am around this.
Do you know what? I think it's very similar to business mentoring. When clients ask me, or people ask me, who is your ideal client? I say it's a business owner that is 2 years in. Because when you start out on day one, let's take this example of I've been a successful marketing director all my career. I've got all the qualifications, all the exams, I'm brilliant at what I do. So I'm going to take my redundancy check or whatever, and I'm going to set up a marketing company because I'm just going to continue doing what I do. And that's fine. But you think because you've been successful through your career and you're just going to continue doing your technician job, whatever it might be, accountant, lawyer, whatever, that actually it's going to be a ride in the park, a walk in the park. And often it takes them until they're 2 years in to realise that they're not getting the traction they wanted, they're not having the success they imagined, and they start to realise where it's broken. Now, in business mentoring terms, that can quite often be, I don't have a plan, I've hit a ceiling, and I don't know how to get to that next level. In sales terms, they realise that the customers they've got are, quite frankly, many of them are pain in the ass.
Yeah.
They're buying the wrong products and services at the wrong price. They're not giving them good quality referrals. The customers don't last long enough, so they're constantly out on the hunt for new business. And when they get 2 years in, they go, there's something broken here. But the challenge is when a business is broken and it's maybe not earning the money that they imagined it would earn, have they got the ability to invest in sales coaching, sales training, business mentoring, and the things that are going to catapult them to the next level? So they become trapped because they want to invest, but they can't. But until they do invest, they can't move on to the next level. So, it's only the brave few that say, I need to make an investment here to tackle this inability to sell. And I'm going to invest in that support to give me that return to take my business to the next level.
Yeah, and that's a really interesting point, isn't it? When we talk about selling and what we sell, some people very readily go out and buy a new computer, a new television, because I get instant gratification, right?
Yeah.
I see it, I can put it up, and I'm watching the next box set of Game of Thrones, right? Whatever it might be. But that piece about having to invest in a skill, which is less tangible because I've got to graft at it, I've got to work at it, and it isn't as instantly gratifying, is one of the pieces here, I think, that sometimes prevents people investing in such a key skill. And you're right. I mean, you talk about broader business mentoring. I'm going to ask you in a minute, what are those big challenges you see for businesses in this space broadly? But I certainly see much of what you say in the sales space. Well, actually, the investment in a process, the investment in understanding that there are stages, and one of those stages you might be excellent at, but another one you might be poor at. So it doesn't mean your offer's wrong. It just might mean your negotiation skills are not all that. So when you get to that point, you're losing things out of your sales funnel that I have behind me. But you need to work that bit out, right? And you need to understand what that bit is before you can have that tangible benefit that you'd have from your TV.
Look, absolutely. You see people, don't you? They've got the watch, the car, the shoes, the suit, everything else. So they're quite happy to spend that money on those things that give them instant gratification. But, do I spend $2,000 on getting some sales coaching? Well, I can't get a guaranteed return. But, I think the adage should be, teach a man to fish and he can fish forever. If you learn how to sell, you're never going to have a problem putting food on the table. And in selling terms, I think it's really this simple as an end result. The work that goes into it to achieve it is different. But if you're chatting to somebody that will potentially buy your product and they can't see the value that you're offering and or don't want to buy, there's one or two things happening. You're either talking to the wrong person, so you've not got your avatar nailed, so you're completely wasting your time, or you're not articulating the value that you're offering and the ROI they can expect. And they're both process for me. Understand who your avatar is, where they hang out and how you can get in front of them, and then understand what the pains and problems are, what the impact of those pains and problems are, and what they need to be able to resolve those so you can articulate an ROI. And if you get those nailed, I think you're on the right track to be able to sell.
Yeah, I mean, thanks, sir. I mean, avatars. I mean, in the Mindset Coach syllabus, we use ideal client personas, but this has become the responsibility of sales, right? Not marketing. And in the past, it would have very much been marketing and sales implement the marketing plan. But if you're a business owner and or work in a small business, the responsibility to share the sales and marketing process and merge these things together is becoming, what I guess has never been more relevant in a world where information is on tap, where we can scale and reach out to people in other people's networks, as we're doing here right now. this world of recognizing this is really important, isn't it?
Yeah, the two massively overlap. The reality is for most small businesses of less than 25 people, say, most of those businesses, there isn't an independent sales and marketing function. There might be a junior doing a little bit of marketing. There might be an outsourced marketing company, that's fine. And they're developing a marketing plan to a particular avatar. The salesperson then is responsible for going out and finding that avatar and selling to that avatar. So the reality is for most small business owners, sales and marketing are either heavily overlapped or they are the same person. So understanding how you going to get the maximum return from the limited time you've got. And I hear hundreds of horror stories of people that have had a 3-hour meeting after a 4-hour drive to somebody that then doesn't buy, and they've gone radio silence. And I go, did you pre-qualify them that they were in the market? They could make a decision. They had the budget, the time scale. Did you pre-qualify them? No, I just jumped straight in a car and I went down and I've wasted a day of my life. And I go, and that in your world is lack of process, isn't it?
Yeah, entirely.
Everybody that comes into my world, if you like, it's standard, isn't it? Let's have a coffee for an hour. And I go, well, that's great, but I'm busy. Why don't we have a 15-minute call when I'm in the car somewhere? And let's understand what your challenges are. And then if we decide that you've got a few challenges and I can help you and you need help and you want help and you're prepared to take help, then we can probably have a coffee. But everybody's stock answer is, let's just have a coffee for an hour. And that's, again, lack of process.
Yeah, I mean, I love this, where this has sort of moved to, because just consequentially behind me, I have the sales process that I follow, the spank up piece, right? And the bit that is the red is the suspect part, which is like everybody.
Yeah.
Everybody wants my product. Everybody wants my service. And in your example, that's jumping in the car. That's jumping in the car before I've qualified you and you're a prospect. Now, if you're a prospect, you've declared, to your point, you've answered some of those questions. You're my ideal client. You have a budget. You really are the decision maker. All of those things. Now it's worth that conversation. And I guess that highlights, some of the brutality, let's say, that business mentoring can bring to people. They are these aha moments that should make a significant difference to how people invest their time so they can do more of what they love, right? So what are those big things that you see that businesses, we might have touched some of them, but some of those big things that you see that business owners kind of get wrong when it comes to their business?
Well, there's four phases. There's 4 phases of a business, and every business owner is in one of those 4 phases. And it's really simple for me. You've got to understand which of those 4 phases you're in order that you can understand how you're going to escape from that phase onto the next phase. Because what most business owners are doing is they are busy spinning plates, putting out fires, use whatever metaphor you want, but they don't take a big enough step backwards to look at the bigger picture to see what's working or what isn't working before they can start to take 2 steps forward. And often a business mentor or an advisor or a sales coach or whatever can give them that external perspective. So those 4 phases, in real simple terms, they're building the wrong business. So, I was chatting to a lady this morning who says, I've fallen out of love with my business. I'm going through the motions. I've got no fire in my belly anymore. She's building the wrong business. The second one, once you're building the right business, is you've got to generate enough funds, enough capital to invest in yourself. So you've got to take drawings out. You've got to be able to invest in systems, and we've touched on that. You've got to be able to invest in marketing, and you've got to be able to invest in building a team so you don't have to do everything. The third phase is then building that team. So what people do you need in your team to do the jobs that you shouldn't be doing? It doesn't mean that you're not good at it or you don't like doing it. What are the jobs that you shouldn't be doing as a business owner? Now, whether that's outsourcing your PA stuff, whether it's getting an external marketing agency, whether it's recruiting somebody, What are the things that you want to be doing that mean you can keep that fire in your belly? And then the fourth one ultimately is you've got the freedom to choose how, when, and where you work. Now, the benefit of a business mentor for me, and there's a massive overlap with what you do, is I'll often talk to somebody at the beginning of the process to say, right, let's have a look at your pipeline. Let's have a look what leads you're generating. Let's have a look at the average value of the clients that you're working with. Let's have a look at your conversion ratio. And the biggest issue that I see is that most of them do not have an understanding of what their key numbers are that they should be measuring. And then they don't review them often enough, and they don't understand how to influence them. And it's because numbers is very much like sales, Steve. I'm not a trained accountant. I'm frightened of numbers because accountants are using things like balance sheet and profit and loss. And these are phrases I don't understand. And I didn't pay attention when I was at school or at college. So I'm just going to start a marketing agency and I'm going to start selling marketing, and I'm not going to have to worry about the numbers. But then pretty quickly you realize that, how many prospect meetings are you going to? What's your conversion ratio? What's your average price per sale? How often are you selling it? What's your retention ratio? And quickly those things become necessary, but 95% of small business owners are not measuring the basics. So if they want to increase their revenue, they want to increase the profit, they don't know how to do that because they don't know which part of the formula is broken. And again, we'll keep going back to its process.
Yeah.
So for me, I see a lack of understanding what the numbers and the drivers are. And then what that causes is trying to do too much. So they're throwing money at, I'm going to start a Twitter campaign because Bob at the networking event says Twitter's brilliant. And then tomorrow I'm starting a YouTube campaign because John that I saw online has got this amazing YouTube solution. And then they finish up doing everything, doing too much. So they lose focus and clarity, and they're investing what little money they have got on inevitably the wrong tactics that don't then deliver a return.
I mean that's incredibly powerful, and I encourage anyone that's watching this, just capture and rewind and hold that piece, because within there is so much value, Gary, that you've just shared. And I can only compliment you on how how simple you made that sound, because I've worked with so many sales businesses and sales people, and ultimately it drops down to you don't know your numbers. You don't know how many calls you need to make. You don't know how much you need to put in your funnel. You don't know what your churn rate is. You don't know what your retention rates are. Mm-hmm. So I think the value that you talk about in data is really important. And that other part that started to really sort of make me reflect as you were talking is maybe people just get that touch too close to it's going to work. It's going to work. And I'm not going to recognize or acknowledge that to use your words, part of the formula is broken, but I can't see what part of that formula it is. So that step back. Often, maybe your experience has this as well, often shows me that people don't have the plan in the beginning. They just don't have the plan in the beginning, and they're into ideation. They're into just following Bob, who says Twitter is good. Yeah, the next one says YouTube works, and off they go. Because the plan hasn't been constructed in any data or factual evidence.
Absolutely. One of the companies I've set up, you mentioned 3 businesses. The second company I set up is a marketing company. So we're not an agency, we're not a full service agency. We recognise in the SME world, and it came from bad experience, that most SMEs are investing in tactical support when they don't know whether that tactic is going to deliver a return to them. So whether it be Twitter or YouTube or blogging or vlogging or podcasts or whatever. So what we advocate in the marketing business is put that plan in place. Now, I don't care whether you call it a plan, a strategy, a roadmap, a SatNav, call it what you will. It tells you how you get from A to B, what's the most efficient route, and what B looks like and when. So if you put that marketing plan in place that says, this is how I'm going to get you this many leads in front of this avatar at this price for this product, you can then work backwards and say, right, is it website? Is it YouTube? Is it Twitter? Is it video? Is it podcast? So you can select the tactics that are going to give you a return.
Yeah.
And it is that, I use the metaphor all the time. 20 years ago, 10 years ago, it was different. If I want to go somewhere that is unfamiliar with me now, the first thing I do is I put it in my SatNav when I get in the car. So it tells me what time I'm going to get there. It tells me what's the most efficient route. And it tells me what an alternative route is if there's a blockage on the road. Yeah. It's the same for business. You need to understand what your destination is. You need to understand how quickly and how efficiently you want to get there. And you need to know what the alternatives are should your ideal route be blocked. If you don't have that plan, you're just winging it. Hope is not a strategy, though.
Yeah. No, I mean, again, I think that's priceless, and I love the analogy. I think that really works, because there are so many things in our current day living that we take for granted, but they are really good examples of that you can overlay a business into. And you were talking about, if we went back, we didn't have SatNav. And side issue, I remember when BT brought the charge card in, and that was technology innovation, because I didn't need 2 pences in my car to go to the phone box to phone the office. Anyway, that's an over a beer story. But what we did back then to what we do today is very, very different, because we are more enabled, right? But the pandemic has changed certain moments of normality that we've all become used to, and this could be seen as a great opportunity to refresh, to restart, reevaluate, and maybe cut out some of the nonsense that wasn't working, perhaps. But in the pandemic, in your experience as a mentor and one that also runs a successful marketing agency, have you seen the pandemic change? In your view, this is, because I guess maybe we don't have the formed opinion yet, but in your view, do you see the pandemic changing the focus that business owners and managers should have?
Absolutely. I think, a lot of business owners, it's really easy to lose sight of your focus for a variety of reasons. And one of those areas might be that you don't keep an eagle eye on your expenditure. When you get a scenario where your revenue drops drastically, all of a sudden it exposes that expenditure. And I think that the quality of a good business isn't one that can grow quickly. It's one that can contract quickly if it needs to do. So being able to turn all the taps off and stop all your costs quickly in line with a revenue drop is the sign of a good business for me. And what I've seen a number of businesses, not necessarily clients of mine, that have been unable to turn those taps off quickly because they're in long-term contracts. Maybe the contracts with their clients weren't robust enough, so the clients just turn them off overnight. So it's left them exposed. And again, the analogy, it's a Warren Buffett one. Nobody can see you swimming naked until the tide goes out. And I think there's been a lot of businesses swimming naked, and pretty quickly overnight the tide's gone out, and it ain't a pretty sight. So what a lot of businesses are doing now, and it's something I encourage all my clients to do, is look at the pennies, look at the subscriptions, review your contracts, look at your utilities. Do you actually need an office? Because I've got clients now that have got 30 staff and they're going, I don't need an office anymore. I'm getting greater productivity from my team at home because they're not getting distracted by water machine talks and 10 minutes in the morning about Coronation Street. They're now saying I've got higher productivity. I've got a more engaged team because they're not working 9 to 5 and they can choose when they work around their gym, child, work, home schedule. They're not having to travel into and out of work and the city every day. So I've got greater productivity and energy. Why would I go back to something that was broken? So for me, what it's caused for a lot of business owners is for them to rethink what they were doing. Certainly have a rethink about the kind of products and services you're offering. You know, I know businesses, some in your space, Steve, that deliver face-to-face, and their business literally stopped overnight because everybody said, you're not coming into my building, you're not going into this hotel to deliver this training, this consultancy. So they've literally gone from 100% to zero. That's then caused them to say, how do I get my offering online? Now, that might not have been part of their agenda previously. It might have been on their agenda, but they needed to kick up the back end in order to execute that. This has now forced them to accelerate that program. So I think all of these things are going to cause us to be more agile, more dynamic, and more considerate of where we spend money that we don't need to spend.
I mean, I think that's really interesting, because I hadn't considered that measure of success in a business, the fact that you can contract quickly to protect yourself. And I think that will be a really good reflection for the listeners and the viewers of Sales Talk this episode. You know, have I been able to achieve that? And are there things that I can do? And you name them, right? About your bills, your utilities, your office, your contracts, your rental agreements, can help you ensure that you are keeping your business safe at these times, whilst balancing that with some agility, looking at something that you now might prioritize that you were always going to do, but now's the time to do it. And now's the time to do it right and well, because you've got the time, right?
But let's go back to that SatNav analogy, right? I'm driving down the M1 when I'm allowed to drive down the M1. I'm heading 150 miles away from my home, and the SatNav comes up and says there's a major traffic accident in 5 junctions. It gives me an alternative route, and I can choose, do I stick on my current route and I just bear it? Do I take the alternative route? Do I pull into the services and grab a coffee and stretch my legs? Do I ring the person I'm going to see and say, look, I'm going to be an hour late, but at least I'll be there and I'm safe? It gives you options. But having that plan and that ability to be able to change that plan based on the barriers, the hurdles, and the opportunities that you face is the litmus of a good business. If you don't have that plan and something like the current situation occurs, you've got no basic plan to modify. So what you do is you finish up staying on the motorway, heading towards a massive traffic jam, heading towards a 1-2 hour delay, because you haven't got the option and the foresight to take an alternative route.
I love that. Very, very good. Very, very good. Again, use of that analogy. That SatNav is going to stick in my mind, because I can really draw all the parallels to that. It's a good one.
And it's, you know, we've all got a SatNav these days. Even if we're going to somewhere that we know, we're not putting the SatNav on because we need to know what the directions are. We're putting the SatNav on to know what our ETA is. And it's the same in business. I want to know that I want to do a 20 grand month or a 50 grand month. That's your ETA. The plan should tell you how we're going to do that. But what we always try and do is we try and beat the plan, don't we?
Absolutely, we do. Yeah.
We want the SatNav. It tells us we're going to get there at 5. We want to get there at 10 to 5. So we've beaten the SatNav. But in business terms, you don't even have those numbers in place because they're frightening you. We've mentioned that. So if you don't, you might say this is my target. But when you get to the end of the month and you've not beaten your target, there's nobody to make you accountable. There's nobody to say to you, you said you were going to do 20 grand this month or 50 grand this month. And so what we do is we go, oh, never mind, it'll be okay next month. And they get trapped in this kind of hamster wheel of business where nobody's making them accountable. So they don't change their behavior and they get the same results. If you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always got.
Yeah, totally.
You've got to have that plan.
I mean, I think clearly one of the benefits of the business mentoring space is the accountability models that you would build into your programs. I'm absolutely sure, and people can reach out to you, and we'll talk about that in a moment or two, where they can find you, Gary, because I'm sure you've stimulated a lot of thinking with the the sort of practical way you've described these things. I mean, I'm still struggling. Well, I'm agreeing with you, but I'm struggling with the image you've left me of Warren Buffett being naked, and I really genuinely want to think about something different now. So help me do that. You've shared so much in this episode, and if you was to just leave our viewers and listeners with, three top tips, what would they be, Gary?
My top tips from a sales point of view is, firstly, understand your numbers. Understand what your goals are and how you can influence those goals. And we've shared that formula earlier, or elements of that formula. Yeah, and you've got some of it on the wall behind you. So understand what your goals are, your targets are, what influences each of those, and therefore what triggers you need to pull to be able to hit your target. And you mentioned technology earlier. Having bookkeeping systems like Xero give you access to information at the press of a button. Often that will link to your CRM system. So there's no excuse now for not having access to the numbers on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. So that's first and foremost, is know your numbers and know what influences your numbers. Secondly, for me, is have a process. Now, if that process is, I'm not going to go drive to see a suspect because I don't think they're interested, I will have a pre-call with them before I speak to a prospect. I don't write proposals anymore. I've not written a commercial proposal for 5 years, because if I can't have a solid discussion with somebody that's a red hot prospect over a coffee in a coffee shop, then they're not the right type of client for me. So that's part of my process. So understand what your sales process is, what you will and won't do, and what process you follow to convince somebody that you articulate the value and you deliver a return. And if you're doing that, they'll stay with you forever. And then the third one for me is, and sorry, if I just add to that, part of that process is having a plan. That process needs to sit within a plan. You need clarity and focus within that plan, and the measures sit within a plan. And the third one for me is, you don't know what you don't know, so get some help. Because if you get the right help, and there are tens of thousands of people out there that will tell you they're the right help and they're not, so choose wisely. Getting the right help with your business delivers a demonstrable return. So get somebody that's going to help you unlock your potential and take you to the next level.
Love it. Absolutely crackers. I mean, they will really resonate with I'm sure, the viewers, the listeners. Those that follow me in the Sales Mindset Coach community will recognize my voice coming through some of those points as well, because I think they're fundamental, but you've really added some, granularity, experience, and gravitas to those through the episode. So, thank you ever so much. I mean, we are come to the end of the episode, but Gary, please just tell people where they can find you, where they can find Tendo, where they can get hold of you. Where do you want them to come and meet you?
Absolutely. There's two main platforms for me, really. I hang about on LinkedIn. So Gary King, Tendo. I think that the name, if you like, is This Is Gary King. So have a search for me on there. I've also got a Facebook group that's there for, it's quite lonely running a business. So we've got a Facebook group that's got about 1,800 business owners in there. That's called Business Squad. You'll find some little cartoon caricatures of little kind of business owners. So come and find me in Business Squad on Facebook, or find me, Gary King at Tendo, on LinkedIn. They're both perfect.
Fantastic. Well, I encourage everybody to join those. I'm part of that Facebook group. I'm not very active in it, but I must say there is a lot of amazing content and a lot of commitment that goes into keeping that community engaged. So
you're a lurker, right?
Strong recommendation to that. Brilliant. Once again, thank you, Gary. That's the end of Sales Talk, the TV show where we talk all things sales. Watch this one back. There is gold in here. I'm Steve Knapp. I'm the Sales Mindset Coach. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me on Facebook. And you're now on YouTube while you're watching this. So just drop down and subscribe to the channel, where you'll find loads more Sales Talk TV show episodes and sales hints and tips. Everybody, enjoy yourselves, good selling, and stay safe.